So my wife and I, we were out riding this weekend, and we came up to a gate like this, and I was going to get off and open it. Stop poking into me. Stop leaning into me. I was going to get off and open it. Michelle said, no, I'll get it. And so she rode Dixie here right up to the fence, and Dixie sidestepped up to the fence, and Michelle leaned over and opened it, and then we all went through, and Dixie went around to the other side of the fence, and she sidestepped to close the gate, and Michelle leaned over and fastened the gate, and we all rode off. I was like, I want to do that. That looks so cool. She said, well, you can't. Or Chessie doesn't know how. That's what she told me. I was like, well, how do you learn? She said, well, Dixie knows that when she touches her here on her side, she knows to sidestep. So you can just touch her right there, apply a little pressure, and Dixie steps right over. She's done that many times, and Chessie just doesn't know how to do that yet. So she said what you have to do is you have to teach her. See, horses learn not from pressure, but the release of pressure. So you apply a little pressure and she steps sideways, and then you apply a little more and she takes another step, and then apply it again and it's another step. But every time she does what you ask her to do, you release the pressure. So she knows that when I'm touched there, I don't want these two getting after each other behind me here. Every time that the pressure is released, they learn from the release of pressure, right? So every time the pressure is released, they know they did the right thing. And eventually, that pressure will become a cue for behavior. So when she feels it, she'll know exactly what to do, and it'll mean the same thing every time. Chessie and I aren't there yet, but we will get there. We will get there, because eventually she will learn to yield to the pressure. See, Dixie's moving to pressure reminded me of the Apostle Paul's writing in the book of Ephesians, chapter 3, verse 2, where he talks about how, he says, you've all heard about the administration of God's grace in my life for you. In other words, you've all heard stories about how God has moved in me for your behalf. And he said it's God's grace. Now, if you don't know anything about the Apostle Paul was a missionary. And as a missionary, he experienced some pretty difficult situations. He had experienced some really hard times in his life. He had been put on trial several times. He'd been thrown into prison repeatedly. He'd been almost beaten to death more than once. Bitten by a snake. He'd been shipwrecked. Lots of things that what we would call really major problems in life. But what does he call them? The administration of God's grace in his life for you. He can see it this way because he understands God as a loving, powerful, creating Father who has a fantastic plan and a purpose for him and his life. These difficulties in life led to blessings in his life for the lives of others. That's why they were placed in, that's why they're God's grace in his life for others, because he sought to respond in faith to what he sensed God was doing in his life. He saw them as cues from God that led to obedience. Now, he could have seen them as just the pain of life, and gotten better or forgotten about or fought against. But he didn't, because he trusted God to be loving, and he yielded and found the pressure of life to be God's grace, teaching him, moving him deeper in relationship with God and closer to his created purpose. You're going to run up against some pressure today in life. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow or next week. I ask you, how are you going to respond to it? You can take it as just another of life's pains, a momentary setback, or you can look for what God may be doing. And then it becomes God's grace to you to move you into a deeper understanding of his love for you, for his purpose for your life. Responding in obedience, yielding to them as God's grace just might prepare you to open gates that lead to experiences in life and with God that you never thought possible. God bless you.